Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, located in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, has had a long, tumultuous history with the rest of the world. Today, we will take you on a brief journey on Guantanamo Bay's long history. The naval base's history begins in June of 1898, where the United States was in the height of the Spanish-American War. Because the United States wanted to keep control of Cuba, the Spanish-American War broke out. Following the explosion of the battleship USS Maine in Havana Harbor in February 1898, the United States declared war on Spain in support of Cuban insurgents. This led to the Guantanamo Bay battle, where the naval base was created. This newly formed naval base was crucial to the Cubans' victory. In fact, this was the first U.S.-led successful foray. The base led the Americans and Cubans to defeat the Spanish and help the Cubans regain control of Guantanamo Bay. This was especially a victory because of the sugar port of Caimanera on the western shore of the inner bay, some 5 miles from the sea. This was the start of the base's long history. Because America helped Cuba regain control of Guantanamo Bay, a few years later, on February 23, 1903, the U.S. and Cuba signed a lease. This lease was a perpetual lease that allowed America to continue using the base from the Cuban government. In 1934, the lease was renewed under Fulgencio Batista and President Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration. In addition to using the port as a naval base, this lease allowed the United States to use it as a coaling station. Then, during the Cold War, the United States and Cuba severed all diplomatic ties. Fidel Castro even stopped cashing the checks in hopes that the U.S. would abandon Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, but the U.S. never did. In the late 1900s, the U.S. used Guantanamo Bay Naval Base as a temporary location to detain Cuban and Haitian refugees. This quickly shut down as a U.S. district court ruled it unconstitutional. During that time, even the White House press secretary believed that this was only a temporary solution and that a better solution would be found shortly. After the horrific events on 9/11, fear of terrorism blossomed throughout the country. President George Bush, in an effort to stop terrorists before they committed atrocities, repurposed Guantanamo Bay as a detention center for individuals accused of being or having ties to terrorists. The base previously was just a small base where soldiers trained and were stationed. The base was on the verge of closing before 9/11. In the early 2000s, the United States used its naval base at Guantanamo Bay as a prison camp for detainees, first from Afghanistan and later from Iraq. The prison camp has been widely criticized by members of the international community for mistreating inmates and holding them without a fair trial. In early 2004, there were 660 uncharged inmates in Guantanamo Bay, the highest it's ever been. Although the United States attempted for many years to keep their actions at Guantanamo Bay a secret, the truth still got out. Inmates were subjected to many torturing tactics. In fact, many even lied about major terror plots to make the torture stop, which ultimately only hurt the government. The United States government even created a euphemism for torture. They called it enhanced interrogation techniques or enhanced interrogation. These enhanced interrogation tactics included beating, binding in contorted stress positions, subjection to deafening noise, sleep disruption, sleep deprivation to the point of hallucination, deprivation of food, drink, and withholding medical care for wounds, as well as waterboarding and subjection to extreme heat or extreme cold. For the 2008 and 2012 election, President Obama campaigned on the promise to close Guantanamo Bay Naval Base. He believed it to be wasteful and a human rights violation. During his terms, he reduced the number of inmates by half, but did not fully close a prison. Last year, President Trump signed an executive order keeping it open indefinitely. With the radical differences in ideologies between presidents and the ever-changing public opinion, it is difficult for the government to make a decision on Guantanamo Bay. Many still believe that it should be closed, while others believe that Guantanamo Bay is yielding results and helping the U.S. government protect the U.S. citizens from harm.